né materia né non materia. In realtà è una dimensione al confine, uno spazio liminale, ed è proprio il senso di questa mostra che non va letta come una collettiva ma come un vero e proprio progetto curatoriale dove Josh, Maja e Luisa hanno espresso una medesima sensibilità, e credo che questa componente di una pittura transitoria, stratificata, dove l'immagine ci sfugge, rappresenti davvero il senso di questa mostra, dove la pittura è una ostinata e vera e propria esigenza per esserci ed esprimere ciò che non si potrebbe esprimere in altro modo. Allora, iniziamo questa conversazione partendo da un uomo a questo punto, visto che ci sono due donne, da Josh, e gli vorrei domandare il senso di queste tue opere e in particolare questa componente fluida che le rappresenta, dove tu ci catapulti all'interno di un mondo molto personale, dove convivono situazioni diverse, una pittura per certi versi, per certi aspetti fantasmatica e visionaria, dove si passa attraverso momenti differenti che passano da riferimenti alla fantascienza a quelli al personale o al religioso. Ecco, volevo chiederti un po' una sintesi di questo tipo di indagine.
Well, in more recent history, actually, I've been trying to strip away a lot of the kind of conceptual baggage that I really was bringing to it for a long time, in much the same way I've been trying to strip away a lot of aspects of the process that I felt like over time wasn't necessary to the kind of feeling I wanted in the work. And so oftentimes I'm starting with a certain imagery that I'm actually finding on a particular route throughout the state of New Mexico. So things that I'm encountering in life as opposed to being mediated by popular culture or academia or something like this. And I will actually go to the trouble of actually recreating this at a larger scale, covering it up, painting a whole new painting on top of it, stripping that out and doing that several times over until what I end up with is something well outside of what I could have predicted.
Io invece a Maja chiederei questo, nel senso, la tua è una pittura di ritratti, ma sono in realtà falsi ritratti, sono ritratti che contengono l'infinito, è una sorta di stratificazione dell'immagine che ci costringe a guardare oltre. Ecco, questo mi pare che sia un po' il senso della tua pittura.
Up until about a year and a half ago, my work was predominantly figurative. And I got to a point where I started feeling like the figure was feeling very light and very flat. So I became very interested in weight. So the layers were a way of creating weight. And I also decided that I don't want to force the figure. So because I flip the painting around as I make it, it's this additive process and also subtracting by sanding and wiping. I'm really searching for a presence that feels archaic or uncanny, you know, like what they would use in psychological terms where it feels familiar but you're not quite sure what it is. So at times, like the painting that's hanging in the front, Field Mother, I felt that the presence that I arrived to with many layers was strong enough to where it didn't need to have a figure. Contrary,
there is a portrait with a lot of portrait inside.
Yeah, the red one. Yes, that one took maybe 3 times longer than the other painting, and it was because the portraits didn't feel like they contained a kind of gravitas that I was searching for until I finally arrived at this one. So there are many, probably like 50 iterations of faces in that one. And I think at the end, they're contained in the vibration of the colors. So even though you just see one, so that's actually what's important to me, regardless of if the piece is abstract or figurative. It's the vibrational power that seems to come across, which is, somebody mentioned Rothko is very present in my work, and I call it, my husband and I gave it the word that Rothko throb.
Also expressionist painting,
yes.
painter inside.
And then the last thing I want to say about the portrait, for the small paintings, I'll sometimes use just a very simple structure, and the portrait is the structure that becomes the constant, and then the searching becomes vast. So yeah, the fact that it is a portrait is basically the only thing that's strict about the act of painting. Everything else is really intuitive and improvisational. So I sometimes just like to work with a simple form.
A Luisa invece appunto volevo chiedere, tu crei una sorta di nuova cartografia, un mappamondo che contiene una serie di elementi che passano dal corpo alla natura, dallo spazio al tempo. Quindi un'opera per molti aspetti totale, dove appunto l'umano è in totale simbiosi con il resto dell'universo. Come diciamo si esplica questa dimensione, se vogliamo, panteistica all'interno del tuo lavoro?
Well, thanks for Alberto for mentioning the fact that my work embraces the surrounding of the body itself, the spiritual aspect, the connection with nature, the connection between one and the other. So the fact that somehow I try to erase boundaries, and that's very important for me. And that's probably also the main reason why over time I approach painting, because I see that painting allows me to represent the inside and the outside. There are, boundaries can be completely erased. How do I approach that? Well, that's the other part, that's the other reason why I enjoy working with painting, because it's a media I don't control too much, and so I have to deal with a great level of surprise. And how do I reach the level of surprise? Like Maja and Josh using layers, as a matter of fact. I think we use layering in painting in a different way though, and in my case lately, and also because I come from the world of drawing, which is important for me, I basically apply the painting using my hands mostly, so there is almost a sculptural element actually in the way I approach the canvas. And then I start scratching the painting off, but literally with something very thin, like a
eliminare la materia.
Yes, exactly. So at the point that through lines, one line after the other, I discover the colors underneath.
Qual è in realtà l'esigenza di essere pittori oggi?
What's the need to be a painter today, exactly. Basically? Why do you need, considering also many times we heard that the painting is dead, but painting actually keeps kicking. Painting is still alive, so what's the need?
I got into the arts or painting not because I wanted to be a painter. Like I wasn't that kid who had a dream of becoming an artist. It was always a form of therapy for me. When I was younger, I was an athlete, and I really wanted to be a world-class runner, and that didn't work out. So writing poetry and making drawings was always something I did from the time that I was little. And I think there's something that's the same about how I approach my practice now. There's still an element
in your paintings.
In my painting, where it serves a purpose of repairing something in myself.
I would kind of leap off from some things that Maja kind of touched on, which was, you talked about the word restoration, and I have this word similar to that kind of speaks to, I think, where my deepest motivations come from, which is repatriation. I think of it as a kind of repatriation of the soul. I'm trying to reclaim a kind of deep memory that's not really necessarily about a specific narrative or event, but
Deep memory is very interesting.
yeah, and I'm very interested in like the river Lethe, for example. Mythologically, I've dealt with that a lot, and this goes back, I think, to even childhood when I lost my brother, and there was this, you know, from that time, just this silence in my family that I think that absence then the work attempts to speak into. So it wants to span time. In a sense, it wants to be able to reach into the past and then contain consciousness in a certain way that operates on a level of time that's different from a single human life. And I think that's the opportunity of painting. It has something to do with wanting to have some kind of communion, I feel like, you know, with your hands on a surface. You really, it's almost like a veil. You want to try to commune with what's on the other side, whether that's something that is real or not. That's not something I know. But I do necessarily have the sense of belief in consciousness as something that is contained within the work, that is activated at the point that it can interact with the right person at the right time, whether that's me as the painter or a viewer later, maybe after I'm gone. So it's just this kind of consciousness, I like to think, that's operating on another time scale that I can participate in.
E appunto da quello che hanno detto loro emerge quasi un'esigenza, ma anche una pittura quasi di carattere esistenziale, no?
Definitely I embrace what Maja and Josh said, but I also want to add that I work with different media, and I think at the end for me painting is the one that somehow embraces all my experiences with the other mediums. You know, I was more a sculptor at some point, and then I definitely dig into drawing. And painting has the physicality of the sculpture, at least for the way I approach it. And in the same time, the work is not about the physicality of the body as much as what is contained within, and you know, and what we cannot see, you know, but what we experience, but not what we eventually really see.
Allora, grazie a Luisa, Maja e Josh per questa bella conversazione, ma anche per questa importante esperienza. Credo che questa sia una mostra che ha la capacità di esprimere quella che è una linea di tendenza oggi di una pittura che non si lascia sbriciolare, che non si lascia condizionare da un immaginario mediale sovrabbondante, recuperando una dimensione esistenziale assolutamente fondamentale. E quindi questa pittura è una pittura contemporanea, ma che contiene la memoria e sa interpretare gli stili.